The full story premieres tonight at 7 p.m. Don't miss it and hit like, subscribe so you won't miss the next twist. Chapter 1. The Birthday. Nobody remembered. It started with a birthday no one cared to remember and a bill for a party that wasn't mine. After 5 years of silence, my family still found a way to use me. My mother charged my credit card for my sister's celebration and didn't even bother to call. That night, with a melting candle and a receipt for $2,000 I never spent, I decided that if they couldn't see me, I would stop standing where they could reach. My name is Marissa Cole, and this is how I turned neglect into quiet revenge. I balanced the paper plate in one hand and lit the candle with the other. The apartment was quiet in the way only a weekday night can be hum from the fridge. Distant traffic on I-5, a neighbor's TV low through the wall. 30 felt like a number that should sound different when said out loud. Instead, it sounded like any other age, and the single candle on a grocery store cake made the room look smaller rather than brighter. My phone buzzed on the counter. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Hi, Mom," I said, and waited for the warm line that never came. Her voice was brisk, already moving. She needed me to handle the deposit for Brooke's promotion party. The venue was finalizing menus. The caterer needed a card. Could I take care of it tonight so nothing slipped? The candle bent a tiny river of wax running toward the frosting rim. I heard myself say I would look. I ended the call and opened my banking app, the blue logo I knew too well. A pending charge stared back at me, just under $2,000 to a Spokane events company I did not recognize. My stomach made a small, tight fist. Under the card details was a memory I had not bothered to update because it felt like a non-issue. Years ago, Mom had asked to keep an authorized user card in case of emergencies. I had said yes because family was supposed to help family. And then I had forgotten to cancel it because saying no to requests at home always felt like a bigger problem than saying yes. I turned the stove timer knob just to hear a click. I told myself to move. I called the bank. A woman with a measured voice asked me to confirm full name, address in Tacoma, last 4-digit security word. I said the answers in order like a spell. "Please lock the card," I said. "Yes," she said. "New card overnight." She mentioned fraud monitoring and dispute forms. I thanked her in the politest tone I could find. When the call ended, the room felt bigger, as if I had opened a window that had been painted shut. The candle had gone out. A wisp of smoke curled toward the ceiling. I cut a thin slice and tasted chocolate that was somehow both too sweet and not sweet enough. I thought of every birthday since I moved out at 23. The year I stayed late to close month end for North Cascade Health Network and brought home leftover cupcakes from the break room to eat alone. The year I suggested dinner the week before and heard we are busy and we will figure something out. The year a group text arrived at 9 p.m. that said "Happy birthday, kiddo," followed by a stream of photos of Brooke in a sequined dress at a rooftop bar. I filed each memory in its labeled box and set the boxes on a high shelf where I would not have to look at them unless they fell on me. The phone buzzed again. A new message landed from my mother. It was not for me. It was a screenshot she had forwarded to someone else that I could see in the preview. "Brooke is the only real success in our family." The words sat there in their simple font, not cruel on their face, only certain. I stared at them long enough for the screen to dim and then brighten again when my thumb shifted. I was not angry. Anger carries heat movement, a plan to push back. I felt the airless stillness that comes when you realize you were never in the picture the way you thought. I rinsed the plate and set it in the rack. I wiped the counter even though there was nothing to wipe. I opened my laptop and signed in. My savings total popped up, $52,000. Every line of it came with a memory: packing lunches instead of takeout, buying secondhand furniture and refinishing it on weekends, saying no to trips because interest rates were climbing and rent never went down, and adulthood is a ladder you keep climbing while someone moves the top rung. For 5 years, I had told myself I was saving for a future house in some reasonable suburb on some reasonable street. For 5 years, I had also told myself that if I were patient, my parents would remember that I had a birthday too. I typed Westport, Washington houses for sale and hit enter. Photos flickered. Gray sky, weathered shingles, sand grass pressed flat by wind. One listing stopped me. Cedar shingles and white trim, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a living room with a window that swallowed the western light, a clawfoot tub that looked like a promise in porcelain. Asking price $175,000. Available for immediate sale. I clicked through every image twice. The house was small and a little crooked at the edges, and it looked like relief. I said the numbers in my head like math in a class I finally understood. Down payment from savings, pre-approval on the mortgage I could qualify for with my steady salary and quiet credit history, closing costs that I could plan for and stomach. I could make this work, not because it was wise in a way my mother would approve of, but because it was a decision that belonged to me. I drafted an email to the listing agent and then stopped. My phone was a silent square on the counter. I picked it up and typed Mom again and then erased it. I typed Brooke and erased that too. I opened the camera instead and took a photo of the cake candle stubbed in listing. I almost posted it and wrote a caption that would have told the truth. Then I closed the app. There are announcements that do not need witnesses. I called the number on the listing. A woman answered and said Teresa Nolan and I told her my name and my interest and that I wanted to view as soon as possible. She asked if I had a lender and I told her yes. She asked about timing, and I said I could be in Westport in the morning if she could meet me. Her voice softened a notch. Most people like to plan a little more, she said. I said I had been planning for 5 years without calling it a plan. She said she would confirm the time and send me directions. I thanked her and ended the call. I packed a small overnight bag because I knew the coast could be colder than it looked. I added a folder with pay stubs, last year's W-2, a letter from HR confirming my role at North Cascade and hybrid work status, practical talismans that meant a bank would say yes. I printed the listing as if a piece of paper could anchor a decision. The next hour unspooled in motions that steadied me. I took out the trash. I set the dishwasher to start later. I turned down the thermostat. The small rituals that say I will be back and also that I am allowed to leave. The drive would be long in the morning, 3 hours if traffic behaved more, if it did not, a line on the map from Tacoma down and out toward the ocean. I pictured the route and the small towns with hardware stores that still sold nails by the pound, and diners where the coffee did not need to be good to be hot. I pictured sand in the cracks of the boardwalk and a horizon that refused to end where I expected. I pictured a front door key heavy in my palm. I brushed my teeth and washed my face and climbed into bed. Sleep did the stuttering fall in and out that comes when your brain is counting and sifting and telling you stories and asking what if and what then and are you sure? I woke twice to silence and once to a siren that faded quickly. The ceiling looked a little different every time until morning came and made everything factual. I made coffee in the small silver pot that whistles when it is ready. I poured it into a travel mug and tasted that first honest bitterness. I checked my email. Teresa had sent a time 10:30 and an address that looked like a secret. I replied yes. Before I left, I opened my banking app again and looked at the frozen card with its canceled line. I felt the barest flicker of anger, then not at the money, but at the automatic nature of the request, as if my time and resources had always been a shared account with no login for me. The feeling passed and left something cleaner. I grabbed my keys. I paused at the door and looked back once at the cake on the counter with its crooked slice and the thin smear where the knife had gone through the frosting. 30 did not sound different after all. It just sounded like the age where you stop waiting for someone to give you permission to be in your own life. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. I locked the door and walked to the car and put the bag on the passenger seat. The phone chimed with a new message that I did not open. I started the engine and watched the dashboard clock click forward 1 minute. Spokane was 2.5 hours from the listing, a fact I repeated because it made the geography of my family feel like numbers I could hold. I pulled out of the lot and turned toward the highway. The city fell behind in pieces. The industrial stretch near the port, the low brown buildings that always look half asleep, the billboard for a furniture outlet that never changes. Trees took over the edges of the road, dark green and steady. Somewhere beyond them, the ocean was busy doing what it always does, moving and moving, ignoring the small dramas on land. I felt something similar rise in me, a tide that did not ask permission. I drove. Chapter 2. The Gift I Bought for Myself. The highway opened into long, empty stretches and then narrowed again around the shoulder of a lake, and the further I went, the more the trees took on the deep, still green that only happens near the coast. The air shifted when I rolled the window down. It smelled like salt and cedar and something metallic that felt clean. I let the radio run as background and let my mind wrap itself around one simple instruction: keep going. By the time I pulled into Westport, the morning fog had lifted into a thin veil that softened the roofs and made the gulls look like they were swimming through air. Teresa Nolan texted that she was already at the property, so I followed the map through a few quiet streets, lined with houses that all seemed to be keeping to themselves. The place sat on a small lot with beach grass tufting around the edges, cedar shingles the color of faded tea-white trim, a little scuffed at the corners. It was not trying to impress anyone. Trying. I liked that immediately. Teresa stood at the gate holding a clipboard and a practical smile. She had the posture of someone who had shown a lot of houses and was not easily surprised. She shook my hand and said she had the keys and a few questions. We did the small talk that proves two strangers share the same weather. Then she asked the one that mattered. She wondered if I was running from something. I told her I was looking for a place where I could be allowed to be still. She nodded in a way that read as understanding rather than judgment and said we should take a look. The door stuck for a second, then gave with a small sigh. Inside smelled like wood warmed by old sunlight. The living room was not large, but a bank of west-facing windows took most of one wall and made the floor a sheet of pale brightness. You could see the suggestion of the ocean between two houses across the street, not a postcard view, but a movement that told you it was there even if you refused to look. The hardwood floors had scratches that told a whole life of chairs being moved, and small things dropped. The kitchen had white cabinets with slightly different shades of white, where someone had painted touch-ups over the years, a laminate counter that had done its job and would keep doing it. The bedroom had built-in shelves that begged for books, and a window that would catch the end of the day. The bathroom held a clawfoot tub with scuffed feet and a porcelain lip wide enough for a candle and a paperback. Teresa said the owners had kept up on the maintenance and handed me a slim folder of receipts for roof work and a new water heater from 2 years ago. I said I did not need perfect. I needed something that could be mine without asking permission. She told me the sellers were motivated, that an offer with strong terms could move quickly. She asked if I had a lender. I said yes, pre-approval in hand, solid salary at North Cascade, clean credit, no surprises. She asked what I was thinking for earnest money. I said 5,000 wired today. She raised her eyebrows at that in a way that meant we were speaking the same language. She asked about contingencies. I said standard inspection and appraisal, and I wanted to close in 21 days. We stood by the big window and looked out at nothing and everything. I could hear gulls and a far-off hammer. Teresa said she could draft the offer at her office or at the coffee shop down on the corner if I wanted a table and caffeine. I told her coffee would help me keep breathing at a normal pace. We locked the door and walked back to our cars, and she told me to follow her. The coffee shop was quiet at mid-morning, 2 locals reading papers and a kid drawing in a notebook while someone who might have been a parent worked on a laptop. Teresa spread the standard forms on the table and walked me through the pages. Legal descriptions, parcel number, purchase price at asking. Earnest money in the amount we discussed. Financing details that tied to my pre-approval letter. Close of escrow in 21 days. Buyer to pay customary closing costs. Seller to include existing appliances as is. I initialed and signed where she pointed and where the state asked me to promise I understood what a promise was. While she scanned the pages on her phone for a quick electronic submission, my own phone buzzed. A message lit the screen from my mother. Brooke needs you to pick up the party invoice. I watched the bubble of that sentence sit under her name like something heavy on a shelf that would fall if you bumped the room. I locked the screen and set the phone face down. Teresa said she would route the offer to the listing side now and that I should expect a document from escrow once the earnest money receipt was ready. I told her I could wire this afternoon and she said that would send the right signal. Walking back to the car, I felt the kind of lightness you get after finishing a test you did not realize you had been studying for every day for 5 years. The sky had shifted again blue, pushing through the thin gray in irregular pieces. I drove to a branch of my bank and arranged the wire. The manager had me sign something that made the transfer real and irreversible. It felt like the correct kind of risk, the kind that says you are alive and capable of deciding your own life. On the way back to Tacoma, I stopped at a market that sold local wine in jars of things, with labels you can only find in places that know their own pace. I bought a bottle with a simple label and a cork that looked slightly crooked, and I put it in the bag like a dare. The rest of the drive passed in the way that drives do when you are replaying a room, and the feel of a doorknob, and the way your footsteps sounded on someone else's floor that might soon be your own. I did not play music. I let the tires sing their thin song. Escrow emailed a welcome and a list of the documents they would need from me. I sat at my kitchen table and assembled them like a puzzle I already knew the picture of. Pay stubs, W-2 bank statements, with the wire reflected a copy of my driver's license, the pre-approval letter that looked more official than it felt. Teresa texted that the offer had been presented, and that the sellers were reviewing and that we should know by the evening. I set my phone upside down again because staring at it would only make time swell and slow. Twilight came earlier than I expected. I cooked something simple because hunger does not ask if you are making big life decisions or not. I poured a small glass of the wine and let it sit. When the email came, it said the sellers had accepted. Teresa called to say congratulations and that next steps were inspection scheduling and a coordinated close, that she would get me a list of local inspectors, that we should keep the lender looped in. She sounded pleased in a way that felt like good work rather than easy sentiment. I thanked her and sat very still for a few minutes. Then I laughed once short and not entirely controlled. On my birthday, I drove back to Westport with the bottle and a cheap lawn chair and a blanket. It felt important to mark the day in the place I had chosen for myself. Teresa had left a key in a lockbox so I could measure a window and confirm a detail with the inspector later, so I let myself in with the cautious reverence of a guest who hopes to be invited back. The afternoon light came in low and angled and gilded the dust in the air. I walked each room as if it could change under my feet, and then I opened the front door and sat on the small porch with the chair angled toward the narrow view of the water between houses. I poured a little wine into a plastic cup because I did not trust myself with a real glass on an uneven porch. I lifted the cup to the air like a joke and felt the joke turn into a toast. I unlocked my phone and flipped the camera to face me. The photo felt like a record for myself more than anything else. I typed a caption, "Birthday present to myself, family not invited." I hit post and then I turned the phone off and set it in my bag. The small wind tugged at the blanket and brought me the faint sound of waves. I sat with it until the light weakened and the cold asked me to move. In the morning, I turned the phone back on to check for work emails, and the device lit up like a holiday. Notifications stacked into small towers. More than 70 messages. Over 100 alerts from apps I hardly used. Friends from college I had not heard from in years saying they were proud of me or asking if I really did it. A few cousins who never texted me asking where the house was and could they visit in the summer. Several missed calls from my mother and 2 from my father. One from a number I did not recognize sat in the middle of the list like a quiet person in a loud room. I scrolled through the flood until I found a comment from a stranger I could not place a woman with a hiking photo for a profile picture. She wrote that she did not know me and that she had also been forgotten, and that seeing my post made her feel less ridiculous for wanting to be remembered. Thank you for doing the thing I have not been able to do. It was the simplest message in a wall of noise. I read it twice and felt my mouth lift into a real smile. I put the phone down and listened for the sound the ocean makes when you are not demanding anything from it. I did not know it yet, but that was the exact moment when my life began to divide into before and after. Chapter 3. The Family Strikes Back. My phone lit up so often that morning it felt like a nerve I could not quiet. Messages stacked in the notification shade until they blurred. I made coffee and tried to separate work emails from everything else. The first one I opened was from my mother. "Call me now. You made us look ridiculous." Another followed before I could respond. "Take that post down. People are asking questions." Brooke came in hot behind her. "Could you pick another month to have a crisis? You are ruining everything." I set the phone face down and answered a note from my manager about a report due Friday. My hands were steady over the keyboard while my chest felt like it was chasing a moving ceiling. The phone buzzed again. I flipped it and breathed. "You have no idea what you have started," my mother wrote. "Family matters stay in the family." Brooke again. "Why are you obsessed with punishing us? This is my promotion month." My father's name sat in the thread with nothing under it. The absence looked louder than the words. By noon, my mother had announced a plan. "We are doing an intervention on Sunday. Everyone is coming to Spokane. Your aunt, your grandmother, you will be there. We are not letting you throw your life away." I stared at the sentence until the letters stopped dancing. I typed and erased 3 drafts of a reply, and then wrote what I believed. "If you think I embarrassed the family, maybe ask why people believe you could forget my birthday for 5 years." I hit send and then walked outside to stand on the small porch. The wind had picked up and carried a salt, wet smell that cleared my head. My phone buzzed again, but the ocean was louder. By late afternoon, the rumors had traveled faster than facts. A cousin texted to ask if I was manic because buying a house without telling my mother did not sound like me. An aunt on my father's side left a voicemail that said she was praying for my confusion. Someone from high school messaged a link to a Facebook thread where people I barely knew debated whether I was attention-seeking or finally growing a spine. My name pinged in group chats I had been removed from years ago. The only call I answered that evening was from my Aunt Pat. Her voice came in calm and direct, the way a person talks when they already decided to be on your side. "I'm going to tell you something you are not going to like," she said. "Your mother asked a friend who works at a bank to look at your account. She wanted to know how you paid for the house. The friend said no. Then your mother called me to complain that everyone is being dramatic. I told her she is playing with a felony. I sat down at the little table by the kitchen window because my legs went loose. How did you find out?" I said. She told me. She still expects me to clean up after her. "What do I do?" I said. "You let me send a cease and desist on your behalf. You keep your accounts locked down. You document everything. If she tries again, we go to an order of protection. And you do not go to any meeting she sets up." I exhaled through tight teeth. "Can you draft the letter?" "I already did," she said. "I will email it to you. Sign the authorization, and I will send it certified." "Thank you," I said. "You are not crazy," she said. "You are putting up a fence, and people who benefited from you not having one are angry." After we hung up, I checked my accounts again. I changed passwords and enabled every alert my bank offered. Then I signed Pat's authorization and scanned it back. I pressed send and felt like I had drawn a line in permanent marker. On Saturday, the house and I worked on each other. I taped off trim and rolled paint over the living room wall that had been a faded yellow into a soft gray that felt like a clean slate. The sun ran across the floor, and I moved with it. Around 3, there was a knock at the front door. It was the knock of someone who thinks doors are for other people. I set the roller in the tray and wiped my hands. When I opened the door, my mother stood on the step with Brooke just behind her. Both looked like they had come from a catalog that sold control. My mother spoke first. "Get your coat. We are going home to talk like adults." "This is my home," I said. Brooke took a step forward. "You have embarrassed us enough. Do not make it worse." "I am not coming to Spokane," I said. "We can talk on the phone." My mother took in the paint on my hands and the tape on the trim and shook her head as if I were a teenager who had dyed my hair the wrong color. "You are not well," she said. "You do not buy property without telling your parents, unless you are spiraling." "I am 30, I said. "I do not need permission." Brooke lifted her phone like a weapon. "Take down that post, or I swear I will tell everyone it was a rental and you are lying for attention." My heart climbed into my throat and then settled lower than before. The old response would have been to defend and explain and cajole. The new response had fewer words. "You need to leave," I said. My mother laughed. It was a sound that had worked on me for years. Or what she said, or "I will call the sheriff." Brooke rolled her eyes. "Go ahead. Tell the police your mother is on your porch." I closed the door enough to see the phone screen and dialed. My voice held when I gave the address. The dispatcher said a deputy would be out. I hung up and stood inside with the door cracked. My mother kept talking as if the knob were a microphone. "You do not call the police on your family," she said. "You came uninvited to my house," I said. "That is what I did not do." We waited in a silence that was not quiet. I could hear her breathing and Brooke's thumbs moving over glass. I could hear the paint roller settling back into the tray. A county cruiser pulled up and the gravel under the tires made a forgiving sound. The deputy introduced himself as Ray Miller. He was tall and sunburned in a way that said he worked outside more than inside. He listened while I explained. He listened while my mother performed. He asked me if I wanted them trespassed. I asked what that meant. "It means I tell them they are not allowed to come back," he said. "If they do, we can cite or arrest. It is called a no trespass notice." "Yes," I said. "Please." He turned to my mother and Brooke, and his voice had the kind of patience that does not bend. "You are not welcome on this property," he said. "You need to leave now. If you return, you can be arrested. Do you understand?" Brooke opened her mouth and then closed it when she saw his pen moving over a form. My mother tried one last set of lines about family and concern and my well-being. Ray nodded without agreeing. "Ma'am," he said, "if you have concerns, you can address them by phone like everyone else. You cannot show up here again." They went. My mother looked over her shoulder as if she could leave a mark by staring. Brooke shot one last glare that did not land anywhere I could feel. The cruiser idled until their car turned the corner. The deputy handed me a copy of the notice, a paper with my name, and this address and their names, and a box checked that meant what it said. He told me if they came back to call and to keep the paper handy. After he left, the house was very quiet. The gray on the wall had dried to a soft breath. I sat on the floor where the baseboard met the new color and I closed my eyes. My throat felt raw in a way that suggested I had been holding it open for too long. I was not triumphant. I was not destroyed. I was tired and certain. I whispered it to the empty room. I do not want to hurt them. I just do not want to be hurt anymore. My phone buzzed on the drop cloth. Uncle Daniel's name blinked. I answered because the quiet could hold one more voice. "Kid," he said. "You are not crazy." "I know," I said. My voice sounded thin and young. "They have been like this a long time," he said. "Your aunt and I learned to keep our distance. I should have spoken up sooner. Mom says I am spiraling," I said. "She says that when she cannot control something," he said. "Hold your line. If you need anything, call me." "Thank you," I said. "Really." We said goodbye, and I listened to the dial tone for a second longer than necessary. The light outside tilted toward evening. I stood and peeled a strip of painter's tape away and felt the clean lift that comes when a line shows up exactly where you asked it to. A text from Pat buzzed in with a small chime that felt like a bell at the end of a round. "Letter sent certified today. Also, your story is starting to spread. Be ready." Chapter 4. When the internet took my side. By the middle of the next week, my phone became a strange barometer. Every time I set it down, it vibrated back to life. A friend from college sent a link to a Reddit thread with a headline that read like a dare. "Woman buys beach house after family forgets her birthday for 5 years." Someone had reposted my photo from the porch. The comments stacked like a stadium. People argued about whether 5 years was the number that breaks a person or if it happens at 3 and you only notice at 5. Most did not argue at all. They said they knew the feeling. TikTok picked it up in the afternoon. I opened the app and watched a young woman in Nebraska stitch the headline and say that in her family, the oldest child had to be low maintenance or get called dramatic. Another woman filmed herself frosting a cake for her own birthday and said she was not waiting for anyone this year. A thread started where users wrote the words they had wished someone would say. "We see you. Happy birthday. Come sit by us." My inbox swelled with messages. Hundreds of women told me versions of the same story. One wrote that her mother forgot every year but remembered to call her brother for shaving advice. Another said she had not blown out a candle with company since high school. They attached photos that were either beautiful or sad, and often both. Some included jokes about cake for breakfast, and others did not bother with jokes at all. I read until my eyes blurred, and then I closed the apps and stood by the window until the horizon came back into focus. A direct message arrived from a name I did not recognize. The profile picture showed a woman squinting into mountain sun. "My name is Jenna. I have lived the same thing for 3 years. Seeing your post finally pushed me to tell my landlord I am taking the apartment I have been scared to take. Thank you for making me less afraid." I wrote back before I could overthink it. "I'm glad you reached out. Fear is loud until you move once. Then it gets quieter." She replied, "Do you get dizzy from all of it? The eyes on you. Some. The ocean helps." We traded small pieces of our lives. She worked in design in Colorado. She had a plant that refused to die and a mother who weaponized silence. I told her about the house's stubborn front door and the claw-foot tub I had cleaned with ridiculous care. The messages felt like a rope thrown over a gap I had been staring across for years. While the internet made a sound like applause, my mother made a different sound. A neighbor from Spokane texted me a photo of a conversation thread in the community Facebook group. People were speculating which family it was. Someone said they were heartbroken for the parents who had given so much to an ungrateful daughter. Someone else said the daughter must have been unstable to make a show of independence like that. I closed the thread when I saw my mother's name pressed into the comments with careful politeness. She said she did not want to share private matters, but that people should pray for clarity. The next day, a former client of Glowhive Media posted a screenshot of Brooke's comment under my porch picture. It was a line about drama queens who buy props. The client wrote that they expected better judgment from a strategist in charge of messaging. The post did not accuse. It simply said they were terminating their campaign and looking for a new firm. An hour later, my sister marked her account private, and a coworker of hers messaged me to say Brooke had been put on leave. I did not reply. There are things that are not for you to fix. My Aunt Pat called in the evening. Her voice carried that satisfied calm that comes when a letter has received a signature on the other end. "Your mother signed for the cease and desist," she said. "I also heard she has been calling family to say you bought a house in a manic episode. People are beginning to notice the pattern." "What pattern?" I said. "The one where she rewrites the script when it does not cast her as the wronged party. People are not buying tickets this time. Do not let them pull you back into the theater. I breathed out. I had not realized I had been holding my breath. After we hung up, I made tea and listened to the kettle's small insistence. The quiet of the house felt earned. 2 days later, my phone rang with my mother's name on the screen. I watched it buzz once and then again. On the third ring, I answered. Her voice was fragile at the edges and theatrical in the middle. I am at the hospital. I fainted at the grocery store. I need you to come. What hospital? I said. Sacred Heart, she said, and took a quick breath as if she had just remembered the name. I will call and ask for your room, I said. I hung up and called the main line. The operator said there were no admissions under her name and no emergency visit logged in the last 48 hours. I called my mother back. She did not answer. I texted. I called the hospital. They do not have you. If you need help, call an ambulance. Do not lie to make me come to Spokane. I am not a child. She wrote back 3 words. You are cruel. I set the phone on the counter and let the words slide off its edge. Then I took a walk around the block to shake the adrenaline out of my arms. By the time I returned, a voicemail waited from a number with a local area code. The caller identified herself as a reporter for the Westport Beacon. She said she had seen the online conversation and wondered if I would be willing to talk about why I bought the house. I called her back because it felt less like stepping onto a stage and more like talking to a neighbor over a fence. We met at the coffee shop on the corner. She wore a denim jacket and carried a notebook that looked worked in. She asked kind questions without tugging. Why I chose Westport, what the house meant, what I hoped would happen now. I told her the truth, that I wanted a place where the quiet belonged to me, that I was not trying to punish anyone, that it felt like choosing to breathe with the door open. She wrote while I spoke, and then she closed the notebook and said she would let me read a draft if I wanted. I told her to trust her words. She smiled and said she liked the phrase quiet hero, but that she would not use it unless I could breathe around it. I said I could not. She laughed and said she would find something better. The story went live the next morning. The headline was simple: The Daughter Who Bought Her Own Peace. The article moved gently through the facts. A house by the coast. A woman who had been left out of her own celebrations. A decision that looked like a door and felt like a window. People shared it in local groups first, and then it leapt to platforms that chew through stories and spit out myths. Strangers messaged to say they were proud of a person they did not know. A man wrote that he had gone out to buy a candle for his wife because they were bad at birthdays, and he did not want to be. I sat on the porch and let the messages arrive and go like waves. I answered some and let others sit unopened. My father texted a single line. Proud of you for the job you have. I stared at it and did not reply because I did not know how to pry it open without bleeding. Amid the storm of notes, one email landed with a subject that read like a whisper. A young woman named Chloe wrote that she was 26 and that she had watched the video of me sitting with the blanket and the cup and she had not cried in a long time, but she did then. She wrote that she had believed her life would start when her mother finally saw her. She wrote that she had been waiting so long that she forgot what living felt like. Thank you for making me believe I am allowed to want quiet. I wrote back, You are allowed. Start small. Buy your own candle if you have to. You are not ridiculous for wanting to be treated like a person. She replied with a photo of a small white cake on a paper plate. The candle was crooked and perfect. That night, the tide came in loud. The windows hummed like a bass line. I lay in bed and watched the square of streetlight on the ceiling tilt as a car moved past. The house had begun to memorize my footsteps. It knew the sound of my kettle and the rhythm of my shower. It knew where I liked to sit to catch the last warmth that slides across the floor. It did not ask why I was there or whose permission I had received. In the calm between notifications, I heard my own voice as if I were standing a few feet away. The word revenge did not feel accurate anymore. It felt like a shape other people preferred because it came with sharper edges and a cleaner story. What I had chosen looked softer from here. Not a weapon. A boundary I could live inside without apology. I turned my phone face down, closed my eyes, and let the ocean keep its own counsel. Chapter 5. Peace, Boundaries, and Karma. 8 months passed like the slow rhythm of waves tracing the same shore. The house in Westport no longer felt borrowed. The walls held the smell of coffee salt and paint. I worked from the kitchen table most days, my laptop open to spreadsheets for North Cascade Health Network meetings in quiet windows. The hybrid schedule had become permanent, and so had I. Captain, a gray shelter cat with a scar across one ear, spent his mornings in the window watching gulls and his afternoons sleeping on the pile of laundry I never quite folded. The silence that used to feel like proof of absence had turned into something alive. Diane Whitmore, who owned the cafe around the corner, had become the kind of friend you do not need to explain things to. She served coffee that tasted stronger than its color and asked about the house instead of the headlines. One morning, she leaned over the counter and said there was a local event in 2 weeks. A group that called themselves Coastal Voices was holding a talk about family boundaries and healing. They wanted someone to share a story that was not theory. She looked at me while she said it. I laughed and said I was not a speaker. She said that was exactly why they wanted me. I agreed before I could think of a reason not to. The evening of the talk, the community hall smelled faintly of sea air and folding chairs. About 30 people sat in a loose circle. I told them the short version, that sometimes family love means learning how to live apart, that boundaries are not revenge, that peace is a muscle that gets stronger when you stop apologizing for having it. A few people nodded, some cried quietly, and one woman came up after to say she planned to call her daughter that night and apologize for something she should have said years ago. I drove home under a sky that looked like silver dust and felt a calm I had not earned but somehow received anyway. Spring folded into early summer. I was watering the small rosemary plant by the porch when the mail truck stopped. The envelope was cream-colored, thick paper that whispered money. The handwriting on the front was unfamiliar until I saw the return address. Jason Hayes, Spokane. Inside was a wedding invitation for June 2024. My cousin, the photographer who once stayed out of every argument, was marrying someone named Hannah. The note at the bottom said he would be honored if I came. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Then I realized I wanted to go. Not for reconciliation, not for performance. For proof that I could walk into a room with my family and not shrink. The drive back to Spokane felt lighter than the last time I had left it. I booked a hotel instead of staying with anyone and told no one my arrival time. The wedding was held at a vineyard just outside town, all white chairs and string lights. When I stepped onto the lawn, the sound of chatter dipped, not in hostility but surprise. Brooke stood near the bar, her hair shorter, her eyes cautious. She looked at me once, then turned away. My father hovered near the buffet table, straightening napkins that did not need straightening. My mother sat beside him in a floral dress that did not fit the weather. Her gaze flicked past me like a camera lens refusing to focus. I took a seat in the back and watched the ceremony unfold. Jason looked genuinely happy. Hannah glowed in that new beginning kind of way. And for a little while, I let myself enjoy the simple fact that joy existed near people I shared blood with. After the vows, while the guests moved toward dinner, my grandmother appeared at my side. She walked slower than I remembered. Her hand found mine, and she said softly, "We were wrong. You deserve to be loved like anyone else." I wanted to say something profound, but all that came was, "Thank you." She nodded as if that was enough. Later, my father approached. He held a glass of water and stared at it instead of me. "I can't undo what happened," he said. "But I am proud of you. You made a life that fits you." I looked at him and saw how his hair had gone completely gray. "I don't need approval," I said. "Just respect." He nodded, eyes bright, and stepped back as if respect required space. The evening cooled. Music started. Couples moved onto the small dance floor under the strings of light. I stood near the edge thinking about leaving. Then I saw her. My mother standing alone by the parking lot, holding her clutch like a shield. For the first time, she looked smaller than the story she built around herself. Our eyes met. She almost smiled, almost spoke, but her shoulders dropped instead. She turned away and pretended to check her phone. I watched her and thought maybe this was what leaving really looked like. Not slamming doors, not shouting matches, just finally not walking back. The drive back to the hotel was quiet. I rolled the window down and let the night air press against my face. When I reached Westport the next evening, the horizon was painted gold. Captain met me at the door and meowed like I had been gone for months. I fed him, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on the porch. The ocean sounded calm, a long, steady inhale. My laptop blinked with new mail. The subject line read, "Thank you." It was from Jenna. She wrote that she had finally signed a lease for her own apartment in Boulder. She said she had bought a cheap table and a small plant, and that her mother was furious, but she had never felt lighter. "Your story gave me the push I needed," she wrote. I smiled and closed the laptop. The porch light caught the edge of the waves in silver streaks. Somewhere behind me, the kettle clicked off, and the cat jumped onto my lap, warm and unbothered. I thought about my mother in Spokane and my sister back in Seattle, how both of them were probably telling new versions of our history. Maybe that was fine. They could keep their stories. I had mine. A few weeks later, a colleague from North Cascades sent a link. The Beacon had reprinted the article in a national column called Empowered Voices. The headline was almost the same, but simpler now. She built her own piece. The photo showed me sitting on the porch cup in hand hair, caught by wind, smiling just enough to look like someone who finally stopped trying to earn air. I closed the tab and let the feeling sit. The house creaked as it cooled, the sky folded into night. I listened to the waves and thought about how easily people call something revenge when they have never had to reclaim their own calm. To me, it felt like breathing after years of holding it in. They called it revenge. I called it freedom. If you have ever been made to feel small or invisible, do not wait for someone to hand you your place. Build it, claim it, name it yours. The ocean hummed softly outside the window. The screen faded to black, and in the dark, the words seemed to write themselves. Birthday present to myself, family not invited.